Welcome to Groundhog's Do-It-Yourself Garage. Today we're going to be working on some side tables for my dad's bedroom. This is the material that we'll be using. I bought most of it at Lowe's. I think it's under $100 to do this project. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is mark out where our cuts are for our tabletops. They're going to be 18 inches. So what I usually do is I make them about an inch long. That way if my boards aren't lined up the way I want them, I can trim them down and make them look perfect on each edge. I'll also be making the boards for the shelves, and those are going to be about 14-inch squares. The material I have is not enough to make them out of a single piece, so I'll end up having to glue for those as well. Now, two of these we're going to rip in half to make our smaller boards the width we need. And for that, we're going to use the table saw. Alright, now we have a joiner that we're going to bring out here, and we're going to run the edges. That way we can have a nice smooth butt joint to glue together. Alright, this is my joiner. We're going to do one edge of each board. I've got a pencil to mark which edge is the one that has been planed down smooth. I can always count on my kids to make my videos more interesting. Okay, we got them all cleaned up and ready to glue together. I only have enough clamps to do one at a time, so it's going to take a couple days. This takes about 8 hours for glue to dry. So we're going to go ahead and get the first set glued together, and we'll be ready to do the next one. I usually use Gorilla Glue, wood glue, for my joints. And it says it'll set up in 20 to 30 minutes. I find that you should wait a lot longer than that. But I was actually able to do all the tops and shelves in a day and a half instead of a couple days like I thought I was going to. Alright, we've got everything glued up and ready. So now we're going to go ahead and cut out the other boards to make the frame. And for most of that, we'll be using the miter saw, the 2x4. We're going to rip it in half and make the legs in it. So the first thing I did here was I cut the 2x4 down to the length that I wanted, and that was 22 inches to make it fit right up next to the bed the way I wanted it to. And then I'll end up ripping them in half, and by the time I'm done, they'll be about 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. After they're all cut, I'm going to run them through the joiner. That way we get a nice square edge to cut. So whenever I put it up against the fence to rip it down, it'll be nice and smooth. Now this is, I think it's a 1x3 that I'm going to cut down to about 13 inches. That it's going to be the front of the shelf. And then I'll use a 1x2 and I'll do the same thing. They'll be about 13 inches because the overall width of the table frame is 16 by 16. Okay, we've got everything cut. So now we're going to use this crank jig that I have, and we're going to drill pocket holes so we can screw everything together. Okay, we've got them all drilled. I clamped them together. And now I'm gonna sand the sides smooth, and then we'll do the side with the holes, and I'll leave the good side until it's put together. So I sanded them with, I think it was 80 grit to get a lot of the rough off of it, and then I done 120 for the rest of it. One of these days I'll get a planer, that way I don't have to sand them and I can make them the same thickness every time I do this. So as you can see, I use the wood glue, and I glue everything in all the time. I didn't glue anything, and it's not as sturdy if you don't glue it. And the screws I use they're just 1.25 inch Phillips head screws, and if you would rather, you can use the regular Kreg jig screws. They cost a little more and they work the same. It just holds it together. I lay this out to 7 inches from the top board. It's from the bottom of the top board to the top of the shelf. And then the next one will be 7 inches from the bottom of the shelf to the top of the next shelf. So now I'm going to rip them down to the size. The tops will be 18 inches by 18 inches, and then the shelves will be 14 inches by 14 inches, and they'll be a nice perfect square. That way when I put them into the tabletop, or the table, they'll fit right the way I want them to. And then we'll mark out how each shelf is going to fit in, and I'll have to notch it to fit around the legs. That way it sets down inside of the shelf supports instead of on top of it, because for whatever reason I thought it would look better sitting inside of it, and I think it's more of a pain in my butt. But I've already built 2 other tables besides these for my room, and now I'm going to do these for my daughter, and it's a process to get this the way I want it. Once I got all the corners marked out the way I needed them, I got my little jigsaw to cut them out with. And then once that's done, I'll sand them and get everything ready, and then we'll start the process of putting them in into the table. And again, I'm going to use, I think, 80 grit to 120, and I think on these I go down to 220 to make it a whole lot smoother. Now I'm going to lay out for the frame, or for the top, to where the frame is going to sit on it. And then I'm going to set the frame up there and mark it. That way I know exactly where the frame is going to sit, because this one, instead of screwing the top down, I'm actually going to use my dowels and do a dowel and glue up, just to try something different this time. I've never done this before. Usually I just screw everything together, and we'll see how this turns out. And once I lay out where all the holes go, I'll drill them out, and I think I'm using 1/4 inch dowel rods, and they're about an inch or an inch and a half long. So we'll drill about halfway down in the tabletop and in the table frame, put the dowels in, glue everything out, and then clamp it all up, and it'll be nice and tight and secure, and it'll look really good when it's done. we're going to use this, I want to say it's a Roman OG, I may be saying it wrong, but we're going to do our edges with this bit. We're going to start out low, so we're not going to go all the way full depth. We're going to actually bring it up and do a little at a time on both tables. Alright, it's really important to wear safety glasses, just so everybody knows. Now I'm doing 2 tables, and I actually have a table for my router that I can hook it up to, and I could have done this on it, and my tables wouldn't lean over while I was trying to do it. But for whatever reason, I like doing it after it's glued up. That way I can get it centered, even though I can center it either way. I don't know, this is just the way I do it. Alright, you can use whatever color you want. We like Provincial from Minwax, so we do a lot in this color, or this shade. I don't know if it's a shade or a color. So the material I use for my tabletops and shelves is actually like ready to paint material that you can buy at Lowe's, but it's like a whole bunch of little pieces glued together. So whenever you stain it, you get a whole lot of different colors in it, and it really pops out in the light. I love this wood for whatever reason. It was really inexpensive to buy, and whenever it was stained, it just looked really good. This is the polyacrylic. This is the first time I've ever used the water-based. I usually buy the oil-based. I actually like the oil-based better than this. I feel like I put more coats on it, and it was a whole lot thinner and left more runs, and there was more sanding to do to get it right. But when it was done, it looked really good.
I think it was just more work to do it with this stuff. It was a whole lot easier to clean up because it's water based. All I had to do was wash the brush out with warm soapy water. With the other, you have to use paint thinner or a mineral spirits to clean it up, and it's a little bit more difficult. Okay, so I'm gonna sand this down to a 220, just a light sanding. That way I can put another coat on it and make everything as smooth as possible. Now I'm going to use this little sticky cloth to clean all the dust off of it and get it all ready for the next coat. You can buy these at Ace, Lowe's, anywhere where you can buy Minwax, you can buy these little cloths. Now you can really see how those different little boards inside each one really looks different with the stain and the poly on it. I think they really come out really nice.